The afternoon sun was blazing over the wide-open desert when cowboy Shane McLaurin rode alone across the dusty trail, the kind of heat that makes the horizon dance like fire. His horses have thumped steadily against the ground, yet Shane's mind was far from calm. He had spent the previous night searching for a missing part of his cattle herd, but today an unexplainable restlessness tugged at him, as if something out there in the vast emptiness was calling his name. As he rounded a bend on the lonely road, his sharp eyes caught the slightest movement near a clump of sagebrush, small, trembling, almost hidden by dust. At first he thought it might be a wounded animal, but when he slowed his horse and got closer, his heartbeat stumbled. Sitting in the dirt was a tiny Apache girl, no more than 6 or 7, her dress torn, her feet scraped, and her dark eyes filled with a fear that cut deeper than any knife. She wasn't crying loudly, just small, shaking breaths, as if she had already cried all she could. Shane slid off his horse and crouched down slowly so he wouldn't frighten her. "Hey there, where's your family?" he asked softly, but the girl looked at him with a dazed emptiness, unable, or unwilling, to speak. The desert wind blew across the barren land, lifting strands of her tangled hair and scattering them across her face. Overhead, a pair of vultures circled, a silent warning that time was running out. Shane took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't walk away, not from a child left alone in a place this unforgiving. Gently he offered her water. Her small hands shook as she grabbed the canteen, drinking like she hadn't tasted water in days. When she finished, she reached out and gripped his shirt with surprising strength, as if begging him not to leave her. Something in his chest tightened. Without another thought, he lifted her and placed her gently in front of him on the saddle. The girl leaned back against him, clutching his arm as if he were the last safe thing in the world. He whispered, "Don't worry, little one. You're safe now. I've got you." The ride back to his ranch took nearly an hour, and the child didn't speak a single word. But every time the horse jolted, the girl's hands tightened around him, not out of fear, he realized, but out of trust. That trust was a weight he felt deep in his bones. Once they reached the ranch, Shane gave her food, cleaned the cuts on her legs, and wrapped her in a warm blanket. She watched him silently the whole time, her eyes tracking every movement like he was someone she couldn't afford to lose. He tried again, "What's your name?" Still, no answer. Only a long, hollow stare. That night, Shane couldn't sleep. Questions stormed through his mind. Who was she? How had she ended up alone in the desert? Where was her mother? Her tribe? The next morning, he rode out to nearby Apache camps with the girl in front of him, hoping someone would recognize her. But every camp he visited brought the same response: shocked looks, worried whispers, shaken heads. No one claimed her. Some said she might belong to a small family who lived far off near the old canyons, others feared she was the survivor of something far darker, raiders, outlaws, or a tragedy no one had witnessed. With each unanswered question, Shane felt more protective of her. She clung to him the entire time, burying her face against his shirt whenever strangers approached. By the time he returned home, one thing was clear: fate had placed this lost Apache girl in his path for a reason, and he wasn't going to abandon her. That evening, while the desert sky burned orange and purple, Shane sat beside her on the porch. She leaned against him, finally drifting into a peaceful sleep. As he stared across the empty land, he made a quiet promise. "Until I find your family, I'll be yours. You hear me, kid? I'll look after you." Little did he know that this promise would lead him into a story he had never asked for, a story of hidden pasts, unexpected bonds, and a beautiful Apache widow whose arrival would change everything he ever believed about fate. 3 days had passed since Shane found the little Apache girl, and in that short time she had become a quiet shadow following him everywhere on the ranch. She still hadn't spoken a word, but she smiled now, tiny, shy smiles that felt like sunrise in the middle of Shane's dusty life. He had begun calling her Little Star, because the way she held his finger with her small hand reminded him of something pure and far away. But even as she settled into the ranch, Shane couldn't ignore the constant tug in his chest. He needed to find her family, no matter how far he had to ride. On the 4th morning, as he prepared to saddle his horse to search again, a distant figure appeared at the edge of the horizon. At first he thought it was a mirage. The desert often played tricks on the eyes, but as the figure came closer, he realized it was a woman walking alone, strong and graceful, like she belonged to the land itself. Her long black hair flowed in the hot wind, her beaded Apache dress shimmered with the colors of the earth, and her sharp, proud features carried both pain and fierce determination. Shane stepped forward cautiously while Little Star peeked out from behind his leg. The woman's steps faltered the moment she saw the child, and her breath caught with a sound that was half sob, half prayer. She rushed forward and dropped to her knees, sweeping the little girl into her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her forehead against the child's. "My daughter, my baby," she whispered in Apache, trembling so hard that even the wind felt still. Little Star clung to her mother, crying now, real tears, loud and uncontrollable, as if every fear she had held inside finally cracked open. Shane watched them silently, stunned and relieved. He had imagined this moment, but he hadn't expected it to hit him this deep, this painfully, like he had found something only to realize he had. At the door, watching the horizon like a man expecting death to appear over the ridge. And death did appear, in the form of 6 riders approaching in the distance, dark silhouettes slicing through the white landscape. Calder's jaw clenched. The White River men weren't subtle, they carried trouble like dust on their boots. He stepped back inside, boots crunching on the wooden floor. The older Apache daughter, Ayanna, was already awake, her eyes sharp like a hawk's, as if she had sensed the same danger he did. Her twin, Tallulah, rose next, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The old woman lifted her head, calm yet unyielding, and in a voice steady as stone said, "They have come for us." Calder checked his revolver, loaded each bullet with practiced precision, and said, "Stay inside. No matter what happens." Ayanna stepped forward. "We can fight." Tallulah nodded. "We're not helpless." Their mother shook her head. "A warrior protects. But today, you must let the cowboy protect." Calder swallowed hard as he returned to the porch, closing the door behind him with a quiet but final thud. The riders slowed as they neared, snow swirling around their horses' legs. Their leader, a broad-shouldered brute with a scar across his cheek, grinned when he saw Calder standing alone. "Hayes," he called, "you've got something that belongs to us." Calder didn't blink. "They're not property." The men laughed, a sound twisted with cruelty. "Everything on this land is property if you're strong enough to claim it." He pointed his glove toward the cabin. "Move aside." Calder stepped forward instead. "You'll leave. Now." The men exchanged amused glances. "You gonna fight all of us?" Calder tilted his head slightly. "Guess we're about to find out." The tension snapped like a whip. The leader drew first, but Calder was faster, his revolver cracked loudly in the cold air, a bullet slamming into the snow inches from the man's boot. "Next shot," Calder warned, "won't miss." The leader's smile vanished. "Boys," he snarled, "teach him a lesson." 4 riders dismounted. Calder backed toward the cabin, heart pounding but hands steady. He had been outnumbered before. He had survived worse. But this time, he wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for the 3 souls behind his door. The first man lunged. Calder punched him hard enough to send him sprawling. Another rushed with a knife, Calder blocked with his forearm, elbowed him in the jaw, and knocked him flat. But the third wrapped an arm around Calder's throat from behind. Calder struggled as the leader rode closer, grinning. "You should have stayed silent like always," the men hissed. Calder's vision blurred. Snow crunched. Then, a sharp cry split the air, followed by a thud. Tallulah stood behind the attacker, clutching a thick wooden staff, her chest rising and falling with fierce determination. Ayanna grabbed Calder's arm. "Get up, we fight together." The leader's eyes widened with fury. "Grab them," he roared. Chaos erupted. The twins fought like wild spirits, swift, coordinated, fearless. Calder joined them, punching, blocking, kicking, his body moving with purpose he thought he had lost long ago. Yet the White River men were vicious. One swung the butt of his rifle into Ayanna's shoulder, knocking her to the ground. Tallulah screamed, rushing to help, but the leader seized her by the hair, yanking her back. "Pretty thing," he sneered. "You should have stayed quiet." Calder saw red. He charged forward with the force of a storm, slamming the men to the snow, fists raining down with the rage of a man protecting more than life, protecting honor, justice, and a family he never expected to have. The leader rolled away, reaching for his gun, bang. The shot froze everyone. The old Apache woman stood in the cabin doorway, holding Calder's rifle steady as smoke curled from the barrel. The bullet had hit the ground beside the leader's hand, her warning shot. Her voice carried across the plains like ancient thunder, "No more blood." The White River men hesitated. The leader glared at her, then at Calder, then at the twins. He spat into the snow. "This isn't over." He mounted his horse and rode off. The others followed. Silence returned to the plains, broken only by the wind. Calder exhaled shakily, leaning on the porch railing. The twins hurried to his side. "Are you hurt?" Ayanna asked. "Just bruised," he said. Tallulah smiled slightly. "Bruised, but alive." The old woman approached, her blanket swinging softly. "You stood between the wolf and the storm," she said to Calder. "Why?" Calder looked at each of them, the twins, strong and brave, the mother, ancient and wise, and then beyond them, to the empty cabin that had felt dead for so long. "Because no one gave me shelter when I needed it," he whispered. "But you knocked anyway. And maybe I needed someone to knock." The old woman's eyes softened. "Then hear my words, cowboy. Today you are no longer alone." Ayanna touched his arm gently. "We don't want to leave." Tallulah stepped closer. "Not after what you did for us." Calder felt something shift inside him, something warm, alive, hopeful. "Then stay," he said quietly. "Stay as long as you need. This home is yours too." For the first time in years, the cabin felt full of breath, of warmth, of purpose. As the fire crackled inside and snow fell peacefully outside, Calder realized something powerful. Protecting them had healed something in him that he thought would never recover. And in the glow of that moment, the old woman whispered a blessing in Apache, soft, ancient, sacred, closing the wound of the past and opening the path to a shared future. Viewers, if you want more powerful Wild West stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next tale.